He was a millionaire, cold, busy, and always in a rush. But one rainy night, a soft voice stopped him in his tracks. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" What he saw when he turned around didn't just change his dinner plans. It changed his entire life. What followed was a story of heartbreak, second chances, and a miracle no one saw coming. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll believe in the power of kindness like never before. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon, so you never miss a single moment of the powerful, life-changing stories we share here. And if this touches your heart, give it a like, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. This is more than just storytelling. It's about growing, healing, and learning together. Let's inspire each other, one story at a time. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" But when the millionaire looked into her eyes, a miracle happened. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon in Manhattan. The streets shimmered with the silver glow of passing headlights on wet asphalt. Tall buildings stood like giants, indifferent to the cold wind curling around their feet. Inside Le Maison, one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, warmth and laughter echoed. Candles flickered on linen-covered tables. The scent of truffle risotto and roasted duck floated through the air. James Aldridge, a self-made millionaire and founder of a global tech firm, sat alone by the window. His tailored navy suit matched the dark storm clouds outside. His gold watch ticked quietly. He was not checking emails for once. He was staring at the raindrops racing down the glass. His plate held half a portion of filet mignon, untouched since the waiter brought it. He was thinking of Emily, his wife of 14 years. Her laughter in the kitchen. Her tired hands still caressing his cheek. Her voice reading bedtime stories to their children. And how long it had been since he had told her how much he loved her. The door opened with a soft chime. A gust of wind followed, carrying with it the scent of soaked wool and damp pavement. Heads turned, but no one stared for long. She was thin, barely more than a shadow in a gray hoodie and oversized coat. Her shoes were mismatched. Her fingers red with cold. She looked no older than 30. And her eyes. Her eyes were wide and brown and filled with something that made James's heart stutter. She stepped toward his table, carefully, as if afraid the polished floor might reject her. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. But it was steady. The restaurant fell into a brief, stunned silence. A waiter approached, face tight with polite alarm. James raised his hand. He looked at her. Not just glanced. He looked. Really saw her. And something cracked open in his chest. He had seen those eyes before. In the hospital waiting room, years ago. When Emily was in surgery. A young woman sitting with her child wrapped in a torn blanket. Tears running silently, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had not spoken to her then. He had been too buried in his own fear. But now, the past stared back at him. His voice was quiet. "Please, sit down." The waiter hesitated. James nodded firmly. The man stepped back. The woman looked unsure. "I do not want charity," she said. James met her eyes. "This is not charity," he replied. "This is dinner." She sat. He asked her name. Grace. She had lost her husband to a work accident 2 winters ago. They had no insurance. She worked 2 cleaning jobs and still barely made rent. Her daughter, Lila, was 6. She loved art. They lived in a one-room apartment where the heater worked only sometimes. James listened. He did not interrupt. His throat tightened. His fingers trembled. Not from pity, but from something deeper. Recognition. The struggle. The pain. The fierce love. He had forgotten. Forgotten what it meant to truly see someone. To be human first, successful second. The waiter brought 2 plates. James insisted she eat with him. They talked for an hour. No camera. No spotlight. Just the clinking of silverware. 2 people. Sharing something more than food. When she left, he walked her to the door. He gave her his card. He told her, "Call me tomorrow. There is work for you. Not because I pity you, but because you are strong. And I want people like you near my company. And near my family." Grace nodded. Her eyes filled again. But this time with hope. He went home. Emily was waiting. He wrapped his arms around her, tighter than usual. She looked up, surprised. "What happened?" she asked. And he whispered, "I remembered." "Remembered what?" "That love is not in things. It is in people. In time. In kindness. And I miss us." Tears welled in her eyes. And in that silent kitchen, where dishes still sat in the sink and schoolbooks were scattered across the table, they stood still, holding each other, like it was the first time. And outside, the storm passed. The city lights shimmered on drying pavement. A miracle had begun. And the next day, James called his assistant. He said, "Find out everything about Grace. Make sure her child gets into a good school. Quietly. No press. No announcements. Just make it happen." Because this story, this real story, was never about a millionaire saving someone. It was about someone saving him, and reminding him of what really matters, of what love, family, and humanity truly mean. That morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, painting gold across the skyline, Grace held Lila's tiny hand as they walked to school. Lila wore a clean, warm jacket someone had left at their doorstep with a small note tucked in the pocket. "To a brave little artist." Her smile lit up the sidewalk. Grace had not smiled like that in months. She did not know yet that her cleaning job had been replaced. Upgraded. She was now working part-time at the office of Aldridge Tech, helping in the community outreach department. Not because she begged, but because she understood people. Because she had lived what many only read about. And James knew, his company needed voices like hers. Later that day, Emily arrived at the office with a basket. Homemade muffins. Not for James, but for Grace. They sat in the small break room. Two women. One in a blazer. One in a simple sweater. But equals. Emily listened as Grace shared stories of Lila's drawings. Grace listened as Emily spoke of her own doubts. About how even in wealth, loneliness could build high walls. How sometimes, people forget to feel. And that day, a quiet friendship was born. No fanfare. Just real conversation. James watched them through the glass door. His heart full. He had created many things, apps, buildings, systems. But this connection, this was something different. He went home early, picked up their son, Adam, from piano practice. Listened carefully as the boy talked about a song he was learning. They stopped at a food truck. A simple one. Shared tacos under the trees in the park. James laughed. For the first time in what felt like years, he laughed without needing a reason. That evening, as they all sat on the couch, Emily curled under his arm, Adam at their feet, James whispered, "Let us visit them this weekend. Grace and Lila." Emily looked at him, smiled gently. "We should," she said. "They are part of our story now." And they were. The weekend came. The visit was simple. Pizza. Markers on the table. Lila drew a picture. 4 stick figures. One tall man with glasses. A woman with long brown hair. A small boy. And herself. All holding hands. Above them, she wrote in pink crayon, "Family is who loves you." James picked up the drawing. Held it with the same care one would hold a fragile bird. His voice was husky. "May I keep this?" Lila nodded shyly. "You are in it," she said. He looked at her. His eyes full. "You are in me too," he said. And he meant it. He framed that drawing. It hung in his office beside his degrees. Because in a world full of titles and numbers, it reminded him of what truly mattered. A moment of kindness. A single brave voice asking, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" But leaving behind a miracle instead. A miracle called Grace. Spring arrived quietly. The cherry blossoms in Central Park began to bloom, soft and pale like whispers of new beginnings. Grace and Lila visited often now, not out of need, but out of love. Their Saturdays became traditions. Breakfast at the Aldridge home, followed by painting, puzzles, or long walks filled with laughter. Lila and Adam had become inseparable. She taught him how to mix watercolors. He taught her how to play the piano with tiny, careful fingers. One morning, Emily noticed Lila humming a tune Adam had composed. The beauty of it made her eyes mist. She sat at the edge of the piano bench and said softly, "Would you like to learn how to sing it too?" Lila nodded. From that day on, music filled the house. Not the cold, practiced music of grand halls, but the kind that lives in kitchens, in laughter, in forgiveness, in healing. James was changing too. No longer constantly rushing. He now walked his son to school twice a week. He brought home fresh flowers for Emily, without occasion. He asked about her dreams. Not her schedule. Not her chores. Her dreams. She told him she once wanted to open a book cafe. "Why didn't you?" he asked. "I forgot," she said. He held her hand. "Then let us remember together." Grace heard about the dream one afternoon while folding laundry beside Emily. Her eyes lit up. "Books and coffee," she whispered. "Warmth for the mind and soul." The idea took root. What started as a casual conversation became sketches. Then lists. Then long evenings of planning. James offered to invest. Emily refused. "We will build this ourselves," she said. "You can help, by watching the kids." He laughed. A real, proud laugh. It was the most beautiful sound Emily had heard in years. They rented a small corner shop just outside the city center. Old bricks, crooked windows, and a heart that only needed polishing. The community helped. Friends painted the walls. Grace sourced second-hand books. Emily baked muffins late into the night. Lila painted a mural on one wall, an open book with wings. She signed it in the corner, with a small heart beside her name. Opening day came. No red carpet. No headlines. Just people. Families. Laughter. One father read a picture book to his toddler. A college student cried softly over a letter from her mother. Two old friends reunited over coffee and memories. And in the middle of it all, Grace and Emily. Two women who once met over pain. Now surrounded by joy. James stood in the doorway, a coffee in hand. He watched them. Watched the light in his wife's eyes. Watched his son share cookies with Lila. He had closed many deals in his life. Signed contracts worth millions. But this moment, this quiet miracle of love, work, and second chances, was worth more than all of them combined. Because it was built not from wealth, but from willingness. From one question. One brave voice. One pair of eyes full of truth. As the wind stirred the blossoms outside, Grace turned to Emily. "I still remember that night," she said. "So do I," Emily replied. "But now look at us." Grace smiled. "We are not broken anymore." Emily reached for her hand. "No," she said. "We are whole. Together." Summer came gently that year. The days were long, golden, and full of warmth, not just from the sun, but from the lives now intertwined in love and purpose. The book cafe, named Wings and Words, became a quiet beacon in the neighborhood. People came not only for the coffee, or the shelves filled with stories, but for the feeling. The feeling of being seen. Of being safe. Of being home. Emily handled the baking and book orders. Grace ran community reading circles and art corners for children. Lila and Adam spent their afternoons in a corner booth by the window, inventing characters and scribbling picture books of their own. They planned to publish one together. James, though still running his empire, began hosting silent hours at the cafe every Friday evening. A time when phones were silenced. People simply sat with books, soft piano music, and nothing else. He said it helped him breathe. Helped him remember. One Friday night, near closing, a woman entered the cafe with two children clinging to her coat. Her eyes were tired. The kind of tired that lives deep behind the smile. Grace saw her first. She walked over, offering a warm muffin and a glass of water without asking a single question. The woman took a deep breath. She sat down slowly, the children curling against her. Emily joined Grace, her hand resting lightly on the woman's shoulder. No words. Just presence. Later, after the children had eaten and were resting on a soft cushion by the bookshelf, the woman whispered, "I saw your story in a small local blog. I came all the way from Queens. Grace looked at her gently. You are safe now. The woman's eyes filled. Is this really a place for people like me? Emily leaned forward. This is because of people like you. James, watching from the counter, closed his laptop. He had missed the meeting. He did not care. He came over, bent to greet the two children, and then asked the woman, "Do you need work?" She nodded slowly. "Do you love stories?" "Yes," she whispered. "Then we will find a place for you here." That night, after locking the doors and turning off the lights, Grace stood by the front window. Outside, fireflies blinked in the warm dark. Emily joined her, leaning her head on her shoulder. Grace said, "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real." Emily nodded. "Me too." Then she smiled softly. "But miracles do not shout. They whisper." And we listened. At home, James tucked Adam into bed. Lila stayed for the night, her little bag already packed with pajamas and her favorite purple elephant. Before turning off the lights, Adam whispered, "Dad." "Yes, son." "Was it a miracle when you gave Grace your leftovers?" James paused. "No," he said. "The miracle was when she gave me her courage." The room fell quiet. A kind, sacred quiet. The kind that lives in homes filled with truth. And in the silence, James knew, this was only the beginning. Because when you give love room to grow, it builds more than walls or businesses. It builds legacies. The kind that do not end in bank accounts, but in hearts. Autumn crept in softly. The leaves turned gold and crimson, dancing gently down sidewalks and across the rooftop of Wings and Words. Inside, the cafe smelled of cinnamon, vanilla, and warm hope. Lila and Adam had started middle school. They still spent afternoons in their corner booth, though now their stories were longer, braver, filled with questions about the world and how to make it better. One rainy Tuesday, Adam showed James a short story he had written. It was about a boy who found a magic door in a broken alleyway. On the other side of the door was not a treasure or a dragon, but a single room, warm with light, where everyone who entered felt like they mattered. James read the last page and looked at his son. His voice caught. "This story," he said, "feels like our cafe." Adam smiled. "That is what I was thinking." Emily began hosting Mother's Evenings at the cafe every second Thursday. Not only for mothers, but for women who had carried burdens, raised others, fought quietly, and forgotten how to ask for help. The evenings were simple. Laughter. Sometimes, tears. No one was asked to be perfect. They only had to be present. Grace shared her story once. About the winter her rent went unpaid. About the nights she and Lila slept side by side with their jackets on, reading library books until the heat of their shared breath lulled them to sleep. One woman across the room wept. She had never told anyone about the food stamps, or the eviction notice still folded in her drawer, even after life had improved. That night, the room pulsed with the quiet strength of shared survival. Emily held Grace's hand afterward and said, "You have become a lighthouse." Grace shook her head gently. "I only carry the flame you helped me relight." Meanwhile, James created a new foundation under his company. He named it Lila and Adam Foundation for Second Chances. It provided scholarships, mental health services, and emergency support to single parents and under-resourced families. All in quiet honor of that night, the night Grace had asked for leftovers, and instead offered the world something richer. One afternoon, as the cafe buzzed with the rustle of pages and spoons tapping gently against mugs, Grace received a call. She stepped outside to answer. Her eyes welled as she listened. When she returned inside, her hands trembled slightly. Emily rushed to her. "Is everything all right?" Grace nodded, her smile growing slowly. "I got in," she said, "to the education program. I can finally finish my degree." There were no shouts, only hugs, and long, quiet tears. That night, they celebrated, not with champagne, but with apple pie, with children playing piano and reading poems they had written. James stood with Emily and Grace under the soft glow of cafe lights. "I wonder," he said quietly, "how many lives will change because of that one small question." Emily looked at Grace. Grace looked at Lila and Adam laughing by the window. And then she said, "Maybe all of them." And autumn carried their laughter into the night air, where even the wind seemed to listen. Winter settled in with a soft hush. Snow blanketed the city like a fresh canvas. Streetlights glowed golden against the frost, and chimneys puffed out slow, sleepy smoke. Inside Wings and Words, the windows steamed with warmth, and the laughter of children echoed beneath the hum of a small space heater near the door. Emily had brought in pine garlands and tiny white lights that curled around the bookshelves. Grace added paper snowflakes made by the local children who now came regularly after school. Adam and Lila organized a holiday story showcase, inviting kids from nearby shelters and community centers to come read, perform, and share their voices. They called it the Fireside Words. The name came from something Grace once told Lila. Words spoken near warmth heal deeper than silence in the cold. The night of the showcase arrived, with snow still drifting gently outside. The café glowed. Families packed into every corner. Lila stepped up first and read a poem she had written about her mother's hands. How they used to tremble, and now they shaped futures. Grace cried quietly as the room gave Lila a standing ovation. Adam followed with a short story about a tree that kept growing, even after losing its leaves again and again, because the roots below never gave up. James clapped the loudest. Emily kissed the top of his head. But behind all the joy, a quiet challenge had begun to grow. One evening in early January, Grace stumbled slightly on her way to unlock the back door of the café. She smiled it off, said it was nothing. But a week later, she fainted while stocking shelves. Emily caught her before she fell. The café fell silent. James insisted they go straight to the hospital. The tests were long. The waiting longer. Finally, the doctor came in. A kind woman, with eyes that had seen too much pain and learned how to deliver it gently. Grace had a rare autoimmune disorder. Treatable. But the treatment was costly, long, and exhausting. Grace looked down. "I cannot afford to slow down," she said. "I just got here." Emily knelt beside her. "You are not going anywhere alone." That night, Grace did not go home. She stayed in the Aldridge guest room. Lila curled beside her, holding her tightly. James worked quietly behind the scenes, making arrangements, calling doctors, calling in favors without ever saying her name in public. He did not want her to feel like a cause. She was family. The café continued. Volunteers stepped up. Emily trained 3 new helpers. Adam began baking. He said he had watched his mother long enough to figure out her secret. "She sings softly while mixing batter," he told Grace. "It makes the muffins smile." Grace laughed. Even weak, she was radiant. One snowy morning, she stood by the window again, bundled in scarves, watching the world go by slowly. Emily joined her, a mug in each hand. Grace looked at her and said, "I am scared." Emily nodded. "I know. But I am right here. We all are." And Grace said something she had never said before. "I believe you." Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside, their warmth never faded. Because in this little café, built from second chances and shared pain, the season of miracles had never ended. It had only grown deeper. Spring returned, quiet and patient. The snow melted slowly, as if the earth itself was careful not to disturb the miracles still unfolding at Wings and Words. Grace had begun her treatment. It was hard. Some days, she could not get out of bed. Some days, even smiling took all her strength. But she never walked alone. Emily drove her to appointments. James sat with her through infusions, bringing Lila's drawings and Adam's latest stories to pass the time. Lila became her mother's voice on the days Grace could not speak. She read aloud to her, humming between chapters. And when Grace lost her hair, Emily shaved her own. Without a word. Only love. The café never closed. Because it had become more than a business. It was now a living, breathing symbol of what happens when people choose compassion over comfort. When hearts open. And stay open. 1 year later, almost to the day, Grace stood again behind the counter. Thinner. Tired. But glowing with quiet victory. Her doctor had just confirmed the news. Her condition was in remission. The cafe held a celebration, but not with balloons or big banners. Just candlelight. Music. A room full of people whose lives had been touched by a single courageous act. At the end of the evening, Grace stood on the little wooden stage beneath the bookshelf mural Lila had painted. Her voice trembled slightly. "Some of you know my story," she said. "I once asked a man for his leftovers." She paused. "And he gave me more than food. He gave me a chance. And his family gave me love." Emily stepped forward and placed her arm around Grace. James stood beside them, holding Adam and Lila close. Grace looked out at the room. So many faces. So many stories. Then she said, "We cannot fix every broken thing in the world. But we can reach one person. And sometimes, that is all it takes." The room was silent. Not because they had no words, but because their hearts were too full to speak. Moral of the story. It costs nothing to be kind. But the return is immeasurable. A single act of compassion, a shared meal, a listening ear, a helping hand, can spark a chain of healing across generations. No one is too small to make a difference. And no heart is too broken to begin again. So, the next time you are asked for something as small as leftovers, remember, you might just be holding someone's miracle. And perhaps, they are holding yours.